treiddio dros ei lwybrau a thaim o'i hyd. Tir oedd ein dewinoedd ar gan yn un ar gwynt yr Arry.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Snowdonia podcast. My name is Bran Devey. I'm the Communications and Engagement Manager for Ramblers Cymru, and my love of the outdoors was very much inspired by my upbringing, growing up in Snowdonia in Bethesda, a place that I hold dear and a landscape that I call home. For this episode, I decided that it would be great if Snowdonia could maybe look at some of the long distance paths that pass through the Barc. So we're going to be talking to Ollie Wicks and Will Renwick about the Cambrian Way long distance route. We're going to be talking to Sioned, Humphreys and Arry Cain about the Wales Coast Path that celebrates its 10th anniversary this year, and to Owen of the Snowdonia Slate Trail. First of all, we'd like to kick off with Ollie and Will talking about the Cambrian Way.
I'm Ollie Wicks, work for Ramblers Cymru, and yeah, I guess I was working on the Cambrian Way as a sort of trail officer. I've been linked to it for about 5 years. Came on board kind of in the middle of things kind of happening in terms of the trail, and still attached to it, and now part of the Cambrian Way Trust as well.
I'm Will. I'm president of Ramblers Cymru. I'm also editor of a magazine called Outdoors Magic, and about 5 years ago walked the Cambrian Way and absolutely loved it. But I'm actually a bit of a serial Welsh walker. I've walked just about every trail in Wales.
Yeah, great. Okay. So to start with Ollie first, just kind of a bit of information about the Cambrian Way for maybe people who don't know what it is.
Yeah, sure. I don't know, probably easier to start off with how difficult in terms of one of the hardest kind of long distance trails out there. I'm sure Will can attest to that when you get going. 298 miles, runs from Cardiff Castle in the south all the way to Conway in the north. Takes in, I think, most of the hardest of the mountains and rugged terrain across the country. Starts in a populated area down in Cardiff, but soon gets you out into southeast valleys, Brecon Beacons, Cambrian mountains, sort of very remote areas, all the way up to Snowdonia, finishing, as I say, down in Conway Castle, and was sort of steeped in kind of Ramblers history. So very much designed by a life member in Tony Drake, passionate walker. I think he's from Gloucestershire Ramblers actually, but really loved Wales. Just sort of, along with many other people, designed this walking route, as I say, to take in the most rugged and difficult parts, I think, to sort of challenge himself and all those other people out there. It was probably a bit of a battle to get the route accepted. I think that's probably a fair point to say, and I'm sure we could get into some of the detail of that. But it's following on from Tony's work, then we've picked it up as an organisation in terms of staff and the Cambrian Way Trust, and have hopefully fulfilled his kind of vision for the route, as it's some of the milestones we've achieved, which I'm sure we'll get onto in a bit.
Yeah. So 298 miles. That's a bit of a trek. Must have been pretty straightforward to waymark then.
Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah, as you can imagine. No, I think some of the challenges with it are, as well, although we wanted to have waymarks out there for people to obviously follow and to reassure them. Reassure is the key word, because there are places where it's not possible to put any markers. Sort of keen mountain walkers, as Will himself would probably attest to as well, they don't want to see waymarking posts dotted across mountainous areas. You want to be able to appreciate that wilderness as much as we can. So the challenge really was to give people pointers to assure them we're on the right track, but to also do it sensitively to the landscape, and also not to lull people, I suppose, into this false sense of security. It is challenging. You need to be able to sort of self-navigate, and I think the waymarking hopefully is done in keeping with all of that.
Well, when you were walking, did you get the get the advantage of having the way markers there, or did you have to just find it all on your own?
I think, unfortunately for me, they brought the way markers in pretty much the year after I did it. So needless to say, I got lost quite a lot along the way.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What made you decide to take on the challenge? Well,
So about 9 years ago, I walked off as Dyke, and that gave me a taste for adventure in Wales. And I went on to do the Wales Coast Path as well, Glyndor's Way, Beacon's Way, and I was kind of building myself up to the Cambrian Way because I've always seen it as the kind of the jewel in the crown of Welsh trails. And yeah, I think in terms of getting a taste of proper adventure in Wales, that's the trail to take on because it takes in all of the finest mountains, takes in that whole mountainous spine, and I just saw it as the opportunity for an unforgettable adventure, basically.
And Ollie, when you were waymarking it, how much did you get to kind of get to know the route, get to appreciate it, get to walk it?
Yeah, well, yeah. First and foremost, what a job. I have to say, very blessed that was a job that people would actually pay you to go and do, which still seems bizarre. I would say I've probably walked 95% of it. There's still a few bits where, as you can imagine, if you think of the big wilderness areas in Wales where we couldn't put markers, so there's still a few little bits where I didn't technically need to kind of walk up there, but definitely tried to get to know as much of it as I possibly can. Certainly rewalked sections numerous times. And one thing I was thinking as Will was talking about, where Will said he didn't have any markers, what he would have had though, there are some old markers that Tony Drake put up himself. So if you can miss some, but they are out there. There's a few places where he did use a stencil and actually stencil on the Welsh lady's hat onto a gate post where he could, or there is one little sort of self-made little post I can think of. So I bet that there is that nice side, the romantic side of it, where I think some people come from and said it's nice to have gone and done it without markers, but I think to broaden the trail to a wider audience and make sure it's embedded in the landscape, the markers certainly help that.
Yeah, definitely. And Will, what advice would you give to people who are sort of thinking of maybe taking it on?
I think the first thing I'd say is to give yourself more time than you think you need. Not necessarily because it'll take you longer than you think, but if you give yourself that extra bit of time, it means that you can take your time when you're walking the trail and you can stop to appreciate things along the way. I think that's always been my approach to trail walking is to take as much time as possible. And if I do see a pub that I want to stop for a couple of pints in, I can. If there's a point of interest, if there's a castle or something like that, you can have a nosy around. I think that would be my first bit of advice. And secondly, and it might not be everyone's cup of tea, but the way I approached the Cambrian Way was that I wild camped it, or at least I carried my tent and all my kit and stayed in campsites when I could. And by doing that, that meant I didn't have to worry so much about logistics and planning out a timetable and sticking to a schedule. It meant I could just wander as far as my feet could take me and then put my tent up in the first available spot. So if you are willing to camp, I would say that is a nice way to approach the Cambrian Way. I think I'd also say it is a demanding trail. It is tough walking. And I would say that a degree of experience is needed. You need to be a fit hill walker. You need some degree of ability in being able to self-navigate in parts. So I just say if you are taking on the Cambrian Way, just be prepared for quite a challenge.
Is there anything you'd like to add, Ollie, in terms of what you?
It was more just, I suppose, echoing what Will has talked about there, and just a little, sort of small side project we did with the trail is we linked in with the Adventure Smart campaign that's going on, going on across Wales and England, just in terms of giving people some of those key messages. So we have now got little bits of signage out close to the most remote areas. Again, signage is contentious, but I think some of the places where you are going to head off into sort of some of those bigger wilderness areas, we have linked in with, like I say, with those guys just to reassure and put in those key messages. Are you prepared? Do you know where you're going? All those things Will sort of talked about. Do you know how to navigate? Have you got the kit you need? Because I think one of the things we are worried about is the more we promote the trail, so the more we put the markers out there, the more people think it possibly is going to be more of like a national trail type thing. And I think we just got to be careful with that balance side of things. And again, one of the achievements, which maybe we're going to get onto, the OS maps type thing. People see that green diamond recreational trail on OS and think, oh, this is going to be, it's going to be, perfectly marked. All the furniture is going to be in a good state. All the paths are going to be clear. That's not necessarily the case. So it's just kind of drilling home those things. You're going to have an amazing experience out there on the trail, but you've got to have done that preparation for it.
Yeah, definitely, and that's something that's quite new, isn't it? That it's kind of starting to appear on OS maps now in terms of the trail, and that's, I'm sure that's a good way to kind of get it recognised. How did that come about?
It was just, it's not something I think that purely Tony Drake, was looking at, but I think the more we started talking as a staff team in Ramblers, volunteers we're working with the trust, it was just another way to ensure longevity for the trail, really, so more people knew about it, and that we would in some ways be fulfilling Tony's dream of having this trail, out there for more people to experience and enjoy. Big chunk of work, lots of partners. So I think it's important for me to give the shout out to all the local authorities, 2 national parks, anyone and everyone, NRW even, the trail is going across their land. So lots of work in terms of them being accepting of the fact where the route went, that we had some stability behind it in terms of having Ramblers staff, the trust, volunteers, that side of things. I think, the nervousness is based around, if we suddenly promote this trail, it gets on OS maps, who's looking after it? The local authorities don't have the ability to do that. So it was really reassuring them that it was going to be a trail that had a backing of a group of people and volunteers across the country that could at least be the eyes on the ground for it. So, like I say, big shout out to all of those partners. And I think it's 9 local authorities and 2 parks. So as you can imagine, lots of conversations, lots of reassuring them, and lots of thanks to those guys.
Yeah, sure. And well, I guess also that's something that you didn't have on your maps, was the kind of the Cambrian Way route. How did you go about navigating it?
First of all, just say that Ollie's too modest to say this, but a lot of credit should go to Ollie, because he spent the last few years devoting a lot of time to the Cambrian Way, a lot of his extra time as well. So I don't think we would have the level of way marking and actually the Cambrian Way on OS maps if it wasn't for his efforts. So big thanks to Ollie for his efforts there.
Thank you.
Navigation for me and not having the OS maps it did mean it was tricky. It meant quite a lot of preparation beforehand, making sure that I had planned out the route basically manually onto maps before setting off, and then printing out sheets and sheets of A4 with a squiggly line on them, laminating them, and then referring to it constantly throughout the day. I feel like times have changed even in the last 5 years, because I could probably have made that a lot simpler for myself, especially with the development of apps and things like that. But yeah, navigation was a challenge, and it's certainly really good to have it on OS maps now. I think it'll make things a lot easier for people.
Yeah, and I know that that Ollie also worked on a guidebook, didn't you, for the route?
Yeah, you're right. Actually, that's the sort of piece of the jigsaw we haven't really talked about either. I suppose again, there's a bit of a romanticism to the older guidebooks that Tony self-published. There actually is another gentleman who beat him to having the first guidebook, actually, whose name escapes me right now. But Tony's book was, sort of the Bible for the trail, but it was very much, as I say, self-published. A lot of his kind of opinions on how sort of the landscape of Wales was functioning at the time in terms of who's in charge of bits and pieces. But yeah, the trust and ourselves then we got linked in with Cicerone in terms of being able to publish a really professional guidebook. Loads more detail, the mapping, the level of everything within the book now has really helped a lot of walkers. And again, that's something we can. People are going to start to find that book more often, see it as a sort of top quality published guidebook. So hopefully more people then would be just discovering the trail. I think that's one thing we want to make sure people do as well, is just keep finding and discovering it. And if they don't want to take it all on in one go, find that the trail is broken down into sections. You can go and do little bits of it here and there and actually have a crack at it. Because I think people see some of these long distance trails and it's intimidating for them, and rightly so in some occasions, but also there's parts of it you can have a crack at, and the book is a great way to do that. Pick up a section and sort of have a go at it and really read a lot of detail about what you're about to take on.
Yeah, sure. No, and definitely a really useful tool. So Will, what bit would you recommend that people do have a go at if they were going to choose one bit of the route?
I really loved all of it, and it's surprisingly varied because I started in North Wales and worked my way south, and obviously started with the gnarly mountains of Snowdonia, then moved into mid Wales where it's quite boggy, quite challenging in different ways, and then down into South Wales, taking the Brecon Beacons, and then the kind of post-industrial landscapes of the South Wales valleys, which they actually really surprised me. I think I was expecting to, in that southern section, to feel like I was in kind of an industrial, quite urban area, but it turned out to be incredibly green. So right up until the very last moment, stepping into Butte Park and then working my way towards the castle, lovely just green trails throughout. So yeah, I think that section really, that southern section coming out of Cardiff does actually really kind of it left a mark on me, and I think that's a brilliant, if you want a taste of the Cambrian way, that would be a good place to start, and obviously very accessible for everyone. If you want a tougher experience, then potentially head up to North Wales, where the walking's a little bit more technical, a little bit more high level, but obviously means spectacular views. And remembering back, one point that really stands out for me was the first day where I set off, and in just beautiful spring conditions with blue skies and no wind at all, and I pitched my tent and just had this remarkably calm evening. And I looked at the weather forecast, and it told me that I had gorgeous sunshine for the next week, and that was such a nice feeling, knowing that I had all of Snowdonia and the rest of Wales ahead of me, and no rain to worry about either. So yeah, it's really hard to say what a favorite point along the Cambrian way, just because it is so lovely.
Definitely. And would you walk it again?
Yeah, I would. Quite tempted to do it quite soon, actually, because obviously I've walked it north to south, but I haven't done it south to north, so that would be quite interesting. I've started to get into a bit of running recently, and I quite like the idea of running it, maybe.
Cool. Okay. Keep on going. Yeah. So I know there's a lot of development obviously happened on the route from the waymarking process, which obviously took up a lot of time, and now kind of through to OS maps. There's a guidebook and stuff, but kind of what does the future hold for, you spoke earlier around kind of having it on OS maps and people maybe thinking it's a national trail. Is that one option maybe for the Cambrian way?
Yeah, I think it's certainly a pipe dream that's been talked about in the sort of whisperings of the Cambrian Way Trust and some volunteers about, would that be a sort of level to get to, so, and in terms of that national trail, we're talking about, your Offa's Dyke, your Glyndwr's Way, so, funding sort of a permanent staff role attached to it, lots more infrastructure to go into it. I think it's important to have a pipe dream. I think we're still juggling whether that's really fulfilling the dreams of Tony when he designed it. It would certainly, obviously, make it a more permanent feature in terms of there. But I think there's some people who like the idea of this trail that's still managed by volunteers and a trust and that side of things. Personally, I think it'd be amazing if we could. I think it'd be brilliant, and I think it would fit in with the Welsh landscape. We've got Offa's Dyke and we've got Glyndwr's Way, and we've got the Coast Path, which is essentially a national trail in itself. But we don't have anything running the spine of the country, and the Cambrian Way fits the bill perfectly for that. But I think it'd be a juggling act as to whether it's the right decision, and then there's a huge amount of work to get it there anyway in terms of the infrastructure and getting the funding. So, but I think other little things we're trying to do just to keep it ticking over, is have ideas of having maybe some more things for walkers to buy after they've done the trail, for example. So just giving them more options. So T-shirts or something they can stitch onto their bag or simple things like that. Just coming up with little ideas, fresh impetuses, just to kind of make sure we're being innovative and just keeping that trail kind of ticking over.
Yeah, no, sounds really good. And yeah, I've asked Will what his sort of favourite section, or the section that he would recommend to people to enjoy. Bear in mind, this is a Snowdonia podcast, so
Okay.
What or if there's a couple of sections that you think that people might sort of enjoy, or maybe some people have already walked?
Yeah, there certainly are bits. What I was thinking when you were talking to Will, I was thinking of bits for a bit to take on. This sadly is not Snowdonia relevant, but in terms of a one, certainly like a public transport option, which is really handy for people. I've done the Pontypool to Abergavenny section down south, and I would recommend that to some people in terms of one, you can do, as I say, public transport either end of it. It also gives you a nice taste into some tricky hills to climb, places to navigate. As Will was saying, some of the southeast valleys areas actually catch you out. They've got some big open areas where you need to kind of navigate across. So that would be one that I would chuck out there as one to sort of potentially take on. But I would also say the bottom end of Snowdonia caught me out in terms of somewhere I probably was overlooking. So that as it enters the national park in Mallwyd, on those next stretch of miles up to Dinas Mawddwy and then up onto the mountains is a real pretty area, and probably somewhere that gets a bit overlooked in terms of it's in the national park, but it doesn't probably, it doesn't have the grand kind of nature of some of the other parts of the national park. So I definitely recommend heading down there. A couple of pubs could probably give you a shout out to as well, in terms of places for people to start or finish, which is always important. So that little bit of Snowdonia, I would definitely put a bit of a shout out. And then other little highlights I was trying to think of when Will was talking. There's there is a bothy on the route, which I'll try not to be too exact on where it is because I think it's important people go and discover it. But around the Strata Florida area, Tivy Pools, really beautiful part. And like I say, it's got a bothy out there, so I'd recommend that as a sort of as a place, that Cambrian Mountains area. But the bothy and the Abbey are particularly pretty little places to have and explore around as well.
Oh, brilliant, yeah, and there's not too many bothies in Wales, so that's something.
Exactly, it's got that sort of it's got that unique kind of feature to it, and but tricky place. So if you're going to go finding it, be prepared to potentially need to navigate your way around. So.
Yeah, definitely. And if people are thinking of this, they're thinking, you know what, I'm an experienced walker. I've been thinking about walking this path for some time. Like, where can they go to kind of get, how would they go about doing that in terms of getting that information together?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can't say. I suppose we can't say thank you enough to the members of the Cambrian Way Trust, I suppose, in this instance. So that is your sort of one-stop shop for pretty much everything you've got. And I would just to stress that is volunteer run, that website. So I think it's definitely got all the information that you need in terms of hints, tips, maps you can even print off at home. So if you want to buy the guidebook, I would 100% recommend doing that. But I'd also suggest, download if you can all the maps you can print off yourself, because you can then start to kind of doodle all over them, work out places to stop and all that type of thing. So that information's there. There's info on there about places to stay. So if you want the accommodation side of things, I know Will was talking, there's a bit of a beauty, I think, isn't there, about carrying your kit and just pitching up wherever you want. But there are certainly parts of the section where there's some really sort of beautiful sort of accommodation spots to use. And I think it's important that we push that element, that we want people to go and have sort of an amazing experience, spend a bit of money in Wales as well. I think that's an important side of the trail, that side of it, that economic benefit to the country. So there's huge amounts of information on there about places to stay, and as I say, hints and tips about kit to carry and those bits and pieces. So yeah, one-stop shop there, I would say, but the guidebook I would highly recommend.
Yeah, and you've also got the start and end markers now as well, haven't you, in place?
Yeah, big milestones. They've been a work in progress in terms of getting permissions to have these things in the ground. But again, just reiterating that sort of embedding the trail in the landscape, where we physically have things now in the landscape. So we've got a marker down in Cardiff in Butte Park. We've got that's a big boulder with a plaque on the front. Got a nice wooden sort of plinth in the ground opposite Conway Castle with a nice plaque, and we've actually got a halfway point, so a nice halfway way marking post and a bench, again sort of just south of the Tivy Pools in mid Wales. So nice little place to stop and have a brew.
Yeah, and people can share their photos with you on social media as well if they're out sort of exploring the path as well. I know that that's something that you've been trying to build around it as well.
Yeah, again, it's just trying to give people a way to see the trail without it being this kind of hidden kind of gem. And I think there's a lovely side of it being that hidden sort of gem, but it then doesn't mean we don't get that many boots on the ground. And so yeah, we've got social media channels, so Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, really trying to encourage people to post their pictures, their stories. And we've been lucky enough for some Facebook groups just to kind of start without us being involved. So there are groups on Facebook, walking the Cambrian way, nothing to do with ourselves, purely passionate groups of people who are talking about the trail, which is fantastic. But yeah, we'd love it if people would, if they're out there, even if they've just gone for a day hike, just getting that sort of image of the Cambrian way. The more we can celebrate these places in Wales, the more we can sort of hopefully preserve them for the long term and showcase the beauty of them. So I think there's an important part to play with that.
Lovely stuff. Diolch, Ollie. Thank you.
No, diolch. Cheers.
So my name's Sioned Humphreys. I'm the Wales Coast Path Marketing Officer. I'm based in North Wales, and I work for Pembrokeshire Coast National Park Authority.
I'm Arry Cain. I was the first person to complete the Wales Coast Path back in 2012 as part of my run of the perimeter of Wales.
Great, welcome, croeso. Yeah, so it's great to have you both here today to talk about the Coast Path. So I'm going to start off with a few sort of questions. If you want to add anything in, or if you want to chip in, go for it. Yeah, so we're all here to enjoy ourselves, so it's all good. So I'll just start with Sioned, really. Just give us a bit of a background on the Coast Path. Most people know about the Coast Path, but maybe they don't know kind of how it was created, or how that all came together.
Yes, so going back, probably 15 years, a little more, it was the former First Minister, Rhodri Morgan, and Jane Davidson. She was the Environment and Sustainability Minister, and they'd visited Ceredigion Coast Path that opened in July 2008. And there were already coast paths in Pembrokeshire, well-established coast path in Anglesey as well, and they discussed that they wanted to see, or was it possible to create a coast path along the entire coastline. And so after a lot of negotiation, a lot of joint working with the Ramblers, with the local authorities, with landowners, Wales Coast Path, 870 miles from Chepstow to Chester, was created and opened just over 10 years ago. I think as far as why the Coast Path was created, it was created because the Rhodri Morgan and Jane Davidson could see the economic benefits that a coast path had brought to Pembrokeshire and to Anglesey and then to Ceredigion. And also the health benefits of walking. Mustn't forget that walking is a perfect exercise, and I think they were really committed to ensuring that people had the opportunity to walk on the coast, and by creating the Wales Coast Path, that's what they ensured would happen.
Thanks, Sioned. And Arry, as Sioned mentioned, 870 miles. It's just a walk in the park, isn't it? Yeah. What made you what madness made you decide to take on that route?
Exactly that, madness. No. So it started out, I was looking to do a big charity challenge because I wanted to fundraise and raise a lot of money for Valendra Cancer Centre. But to raise the amount of money that I wanted to raise, and being a normal person, I had to do something quite big. It happened to coincide timing-wise with the Wales Coast Path soon to be opening. And it was actually a throwaway comment from Sue Rice, who was responsible at the time for managing the Wales Coast Path, where she just said, "Oh, why don't you run the Wales Coast Path?" So she meant it as a joke. I took it a little bit seriously, and then realised that I had to get home somehow, so I added Offa's Dyke to it. Yeah, that's how it came about. So pure naivety, but yeah. Yeah.
No, well, you've got to start somewhere, I guess, and set it big or go home, or whatever they say. So, no, definitely. And I guess also, you know, the path was still being created
Yeah.
then, you know, as Sioned spoke about, maybe what kind of, you know, that must have added to the challenge.
Yeah, I think as well, I was living in South Wales, and I was very close to the Vale of Glamorgan stretch of the coast path that I knew really well. So I had in my mind that the sections of the coast that I had already been to in a walking capacity, I really loved. So the idea of doing a challenge that was based on that and being able to do the whole country was fantastic. So yeah.
Brilliant. And Sioned, you mentioned it's 10 years ago. It's hard to believe that it's 10 years ago, I'm sure. But you know, what are some of the milestones that have happened in that time?
Well, I guess there's too many to mention today, but the one priority that the team have had over time is to improve the coast path, is to make it accessible for more and more people, to improve the line, to get it as close as possible, the coastline, and to realign it and make it as pleasurable as experience as possible. So there are new bridges, new stretches of coast path that are available for everyone, that are available for people who use wheelchairs and are less able. And I guess the thing that we're most proud of is the fact that it is a continuous path. You know, there are no breaks, and you can walk or run from north to south or south to north on one continuous path. There's constantly work to improve and to realign the path and to make it even better for people that do walk or run the path.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's something that a lot of people don't realise, because it's such a long path. You know, there are a lot of issues that come up you have to deal with. There's erosion of the path sometimes, so you've got to kind of like find ways to kind of constantly look at that. So that definitely takes a lot of energy. And obviously it's 10 years. So what kind of things have you been doing to, you know, as part of the 10-year celebrations?
Well, we started planning probably 6 months before the birthday. The birthday was in May, and we were really keen to ensure that it was kind of a whole year of celebration, that everybody benefited, and we were to really emphasise the importance and encourage people to walk the path throughout the year. So we worked closely with Visit Wales to ensure that it was promoted, and that people from across the world knew that the coast path existed in the first place, but also the celebration. So we've had features and publications such as National Geographic, and we've also worked with a whole range of partners to create new products. For instance, we've worked with Cadw to create new itineraries, new ideas, so that people can visit a castle on their journey. We've worked with the likes of Refill Cymru to promote the fact that the Wales Coast Path has over 600 places where you can refill your bottle, to create a plastic-free path. And we did that. We created a lovely image, some sand art on a beach, one of my favourite beaches in Cambrian in Ceredigion. And we also worked in partnership with the Edrych, the National Youth Movement for Wales, to create new education resources, so that the 30,000 children that visit their centres in Llangrannog and Cardiff are able to learn about the path. Natural Resources Wales' education team have created loads of new resources to encourage school groups to really appreciate the Wales Coast Path, to use the Coast Path as part of their education. We've also launched a merchandise range, so t-shirts, bags, hats, you name it, you can buy to commemorate your journey. And most importantly, the profits go back to the maintenance of the path. Over the summer, we've had a challenge called the Big 870. The people from all over Wales and beyond have pledged to walk a piece of path, and we're delighted that nearly 4,000 miles have been pledged. We're delighted after COVID that there's the walking festivals that were cancelled for a couple of years have now taken place, and Chepstow, Prestatyn, Gower, Denbighshire all had celebrations and had lovely walks on their regions of the path. This autumn we've had 10 artists from across Wales and 10 poets from across Wales creating their own tributes to the path. So they're being unveiled throughout the autumn, and the number of walks have been arranged to coincide with that. We've had a partnership, an ongoing partnership with Transport for Wales to really encourage people to use train to access the path. And there's a number of initiatives that are developing so that we go on celebrating till next May.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, it certainly seems to be a lot going on. And I think that's one of the things that comes across when we talk about the Coast Path is there really is something for everybody there. There's, I've walked quite a lot of stretches of it, and, it's great with, there are sections that are a bit more suitable, maybe, they're a bit tougher going, so you need to be prepared for those, but also great sections for sort of family walks and sort of accessibility stuff. So no, it's really great to hear about all those really positive stuff kind of reflecting that really. And Arry, you didn't fancy running it again for the 10-year celebration then?
No, I did go back and walk stretches. So
Brilliant.
That's one of the bonuses of having done it all at the start, has meant that I've been able to pick my favourite bits to go back to and go and repeat them. So I joined someone that was walking the whole path at the time of the anniversary, and went and joined her for a couple of her stretches, and then so that was really nice.
Brilliant. And then obviously for you to do it, there was a lot of planning involved. There was a huge amount of kind of logistical element to kind of prepare for that. So what kind of advice would you give for anyone who's sitting there thinking, do you know what, I want to set myself a really big challenge, maybe not offers like as well, but Coast Path in itself, 870 miles is perfectly respectable, or a chunk of it, or maybe they're going to do it in a chunk. What kind of advice would you give for anyone wanting to maybe walk it or even run it?
It's, to be honest, if you're not planning on doing it for speed, then take your time, because that's one of the things that I felt like at the time that I missed out on, was that I almost did it too quickly to enjoy some of the sections. But the best bit about that was that, like I said, I could go back afterwards, and I've gone back, and every single time I go back it looks differently. It looks like different to how it was before. And the other thing is, I always say look behind you, because if you walk in one direction, the view from the opposite direction is totally different. So you can always do a section at least twice and see something completely different. But it's also enjoying the contrast, because I think the thing that I love most about the Wales Coast Path is that it is a path of contrasts. And I noted when I did it all in one go, I felt like every section had its own identity, and you could sort of just feel like you were in a different part of Wales. So and that was really apparent. So there could be like one day I'd be going past the industry and power stations, which I grew to love, weirdly. And then the next day there's medieval castles and beautiful beaches and stuff like that. So yeah, it's basically, if anyone was doing it, take time to enjoy it, and also don't underestimate it, because I think there's been sort of a lot of people sometimes think, oh, it's on the coast, it's going to be flat and full of seagulls and ice cream, and it is full of seagulls and ice cream, but but yeah, there's sections of it that are just like really sort of quite tough going, but the reward is incredible when you get to the top of the cliff.
No, definitely, I couldn't agree more. I think there is so much to kind of take in, and even doing it in different seasons just dramatically changes that experience as well. And Sioned, is there if people want to get that information to plan their route, I'm guessing there's quite a lot of stuff on the Wales Coast Path website.
Yeah, there's comprehensive, there's an interactive map, which is really useful for kind of the really practical detail around planning your day. But there's also a new app that where you can track your walk. There's also information about accommodation, baggage and transfers, and even tour operators that can actually organise your journey for you. So there's a collection of information that is designed to be useful. And don't forget, you don't have to walk the whole lot. You can take a weekend away and, you know, base yourself in the middle and then walk south one day, get a train back or public transport back, and then walk a different direction on the following day. So there's lots of options. And, you know, as Arry and Bran have mentioned, you know, there's such a variety. And for me, you know, that's the most important thing, is for people to appreciate how lucky we are to have a coast path. I was in Ireland a year ago in Connemara, which is an absolutely amazing place. But you go and visit a beach, and at either end of the beach there's barbed wire. You can't, and you then come home and appreciate the fact that you actually can walk beyond a beach, and how special that is.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, that sounds great. And then in terms of the future, then in terms of those, you know, those people maybe who want to go for day trips, is there, you know, what are other kind of plans, you know, in terms of, you spoke about like the sustainable transport element, so you've got the trains and the buses and different kind of operators, but are there plans for maybe like circular routes and development and other things that the path can offer?
There's always opportunities to improve the path. You know, public transport provision is pretty good, but, you know, there's always room for improvement and to extend the season. As far as loops and links, there's always opportunities to create loops and links. Obviously, there are you know, practical issues for creating new routes, but, you know, that is something that people are saying, that, you know, they do want to create they do want to walk circular routes. There are already you know, number of opportunities to walk circulars, but, you know, I'd like to think that in future that there'll be, you know, even more information and provision for people to enjoy the coast path you know, differently.
Brilliant. And yeah, talking about kind of visiting maybe some of your favorite places, you know, how you can pick and choose because you know the whole lot. So, you know, where are some of your favourite places? Bear in mind, this is a Snowdonia podcast. You have to say nice things about Snowdonia.
Yeah, no, actually, no, I definitely would, because it's my favourite overall section was Anglesey, and I've been sort of quite vocal about that because I did fall in love with it. But the specific part of Anglesey that I love is the bit between Cemmaes and Amlwch. It's one of the more challenging sections, but it's otherworldly. It's like, I love it. It's incredible. But the places that I go back to sort of most often that fall into my favourites are one of my favourite beaches is Harlech. It's an incredible beach. You can feel like you're the only person on the planet, and the fact that I can stand on a beach and see the top of Snowdonia, it's like Snowdon, just completely blows my mind. So so that's one of the reasons that I love that. So yeah, I go back there a fair bit, and I also love sort of obviously Pembrokeshire, Ceredigion, and the Gower, but I think overall Anglesey's stolen my heart.
Because of the views of Snowdonia,
absolutely, yes. But no, the Snowdonia is like all the section around Gwynedd. I mean, Gwynedd is where my family's from as well, so I've got a bit of my home connection there. But yeah, Gwynedd, you win the beach award for me.
Brilliant. And Sioned, do you have a favourite place?
Well, I'm quite torn because I'm from Ceredigion. So I spent my childhood in Llangrannog, Cwmtudi, and that bit. And I was so delighted when the Ceredigion Coast Path opened, first of all, in 2008. It was amazing. I remember my father and I spent many an afternoon in the kind of Cwmtudi, Llangrannog, going down to Lochden. But then I have lived near Snowdonia for nearly 20 years. And so one of the stretches that I think has everything and is an amazing stretch is from Cricieth to Portmeirion. Yeah. You can pop on the train in Porthmadog or in Minffordd, take the train to Cricieth. There are a host of amazing places to have breakfast or lunch or ice cream, or it depends on the time of day, and then walk right along that amazing coastline. bit of a dip maybe in Black Rock Sands, and then to Porthmadog, and then finish in Portmeirion. I think that is probably one of my favourite walks in Snowdonia.
I feel like I want to get out and walk the coast path right now, actually. Like all this inspirational stuff sitting in front of a screen, it just gives you that inspiration. So yeah, definitely for people kind of looking maybe to plan their trips and stuff, there's lots of great information out there clearly, and lots of great advice to be had. And yeah, clearly a lot of people by now have completed the entire path as well, which is really, really positive. And hopefully a lot more people will be inspired to get out there and enjoy it themselves.
Right, I'm Aled Owen. I actually created the Slate Trail, and now I'm a trustee of the Snowdonia Slate Trail Trust.
Excellent. Welcome to the podcast. Yeah, so can you give us a bit of information about the Slate Trail? A lot of people might not know where the Slate Trail goes, how it was created, and when it was created.
Well, I used to live in Cambrian, which is a very small village in the back of beyond near Betws. Has no mobile phone, it has no shop. The nearest pub is 3 miles away. There's no shop in that village either. And I was doing a master's in community development at the same time down in Bangor. And a partner and I walked Wainwright's coast to coast from St Bees to Robin Hood's Bay. And if you go through the Yorkshire Dales, and before you get to the Yorkshire Moors, there's a really long, boring, flat agricultural bit. And in the middle of this area is a little village called Danby Wisk. It's only the size of Cambrian, but it's got a pub. And in the pub, there's a post office, and there's a shop, and there's B&Bs there, and the farmer has a campsite and a bunk barn. And I thought, we could do something like this here with my community development hat on. And so my partner and I spent quite a while, maybe a year, thinking about a route. And once I'd come up with a route, I then had to get some backing for it. And we had a meeting with representatives from Conwy, Snowdonia National Park, Gwynedd, the Ramblers, and a number of local enterprises in the Penguern in Llanfestiniog. And Peter Rutherford from Snowdonia National Park was very enthusiastic. He thought this was a go. So that was 2013. So we had a bit of a route, and that's when it all started.
Wow, amazing. And kind of what were the challenges to create that route then?
Well, I was using public footpaths. So we didn't mostly public footpaths. There are 2 small lengths of permissive path, but mostly public footpaths. So that wasn't a problem. But it was very useful liaising with the Ramblers, who did a survey of most of the routes to look at the condition of everything, and came up with some suggestions as to maybe we could move it here or there. And Gwynedd also, they came up with some very good suggestions of routing it, which I thought were better than mine, actually, at the end of the day. And then it was a long period of consultation, because we had consultations with about 100 landowners and tenants, about 15 community councils, National Trust, Natural Resources Wales, all of these people we had to talk to and get them on board before finalising the route. At that stage, then we had a route, and then I thought, now we need to raise the money. Now the money was, I was a bit naive, I have to say. I thought for about 30 grand, we could buy some roundels and some posts and some signs and put them up, and that's it. But no, it eventually ended up with the Path project, a schools project, where we got 15 schools involved, and about 300 kids were taken up into the hills where they did little projects. If it was a maths project, they measured volumes of buildings and areas. Some did songs and plays. Then there was a community oral history project, and that was at £90,000 it ended up as. Now, if you compare that to the Fife Pilgrims Path project of a few years ago, that was 500,000. So I think we did pretty well. And then the challenge was getting the money, and it took 2 years, maybe 40 funding applications, and we got 16, and we got mostly HLF and Magnox and many other trusts and organisations. And people, we have the local authorities putting up the road signs, Ramblers, National Park, the Snowdonia Society and other volunteers, Cofio Cymorthyn, putting up our rambles. So we had a lot of people helping, and it was all signed by 2017.
Wow, sounds like a pretty monumental team effort with lots of partners involved. Sounds fantastic.
Oh, they were good. They were good, you know. And I mean, I remember dealing with the footpath people in Conwy, Caroline Turner, and Gerard Jones, who's now retired from Gwynedd. They were fantastic. They were fantastic. You know, good ideas and very proactive.
Brilliant. And how about the management of the path now? Is that also a team effort?
It is. We formed a charity, the trust, and we have 6 trustees. We've got 2 chief wardens who have half the path each, and under them there's about 13 volunteer wardens who walk their little bit, maybe twice a year, replacing roundels, highlighting any problems, you know, broken stiles and this and that and the other. Then we can tell those who we haven't got the resources or the money to do things like replacing stiles, but we can go for grants or what have you. So, you know, we do the minor clearance and sign maintenance.
Brilliant. And yeah, going from how it's managed to kind of, obviously you've come a long way in quite a short time. What are the kind of hopes for the future of the path? Are you looking at maybe a status for it, maybe like a national trail, or is it too small? Or what's the pipe dream?
I'd love it to be a national trail. And when you think, especially with the World Heritage Site status recently, that it just seems sensible that it should be a national trail. But I did speak to the Senedd about this, and they said, you know, if it becomes a national trail, then the path is fixed. It needs to be a certain standard, and what have you. For example, they prefer gates rather than stiles for accessibility. We've got a few very, very boggy parts, you know, the Mignine, for example.
Yeah.
We have addressed one bit which is outside the site of special scientific interest, but other bits on Gwaungunwy as well, difficult to address. And it needs money spending on it if it's going to be a national trail. And you know what the situation is. I mean, the councils do not have that sort of money to spend. Ultimately, I'd love it to be a national trail.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. No. And you never know. You never know what can change. And so a little bit more about the trail itself. You know, if somebody's been listening to this, I grew up in that area. I grew up in Bethesda, but I've never knowingly walked the Slate Trail itself. I'm pretty sure I've walked chunks of it.
Oh, you will have.
But in terms of, you know, if somebody's sitting there and they're thinking, do you know what, this sounds really great, I want to give this a go. Kind of, how long does it take to walk? Where can people get information? Kind of what information do they need? Maybe what kind of, you know, where can they go for that information?
Well, I always call this Tour de Lwybrau. You know, some people have done the Tour de Mont Blanc. Well, this is a circular walk round Snowdon. It's a bit of a lollipop shape because it starts in Bangor and goes up to Bethesda, and then does this circle, comes back to Bethesda, and you can either walk back or catch a bus. It's 83 miles. The fastest known time is under 20 hours. So if you want to do it that fast,
I wouldn't want to do it that fast.
I took a group around in 9 days, which included visits to Llechwedd and to the Slate Museum, and that was very relaxed. Most people do it between 5 and 7 days. We've got a website, www.snowdoniaslatetrail.org, which has a load of historical information about each section, and it's also got downloadable maps and a GPX that you could download onto your Strava or OS Maps. And you can always contact us. We do often get emails saying, is it okay for dogs, for example? I had an email the day before yesterday. No scrambling or anything on there. So apart from that little bit near Ogwen, there's a 6-foot scramble there, isn't there? But no, all the information you need, I think, is on the website. It has details of accommodation. It has details of transport. It's actually got a suggested itinerary because one guy did it based in Carnarvon and did it entirely by bus. It did take him, 12-hour days, but and he's done it 3 times. So he's a real enthusiast for it. Bonkers.
You need a special award, I think, if you do that 3 times and by bus. So that sounds great.
That's right.
I believe there's also a guidebook that people can get as well.
I did write a guidebook. Originally, it was going to be with Cicerone Press, but things didn't work out like that. Although I had written it, and it's now published. Well, you can buy it off the website. If you buy it off the website, the profit, which is getting on for £7 per book, goes towards buying new signs and improvements. It's waterproof, which is useful.
Yeah, definitely. If you're walking in Wales, definitely a necessity.
And it's published by Rucksack Readers, so it's in the same series as Annapurna Base Camp and Machu Picchu.
Oh wow, that's impressive. Brilliant. And if people are walking along it, but they think, you know what, I don't have the time to walk the entire thing, and maybe I want to walk a couple of sections. Do you have any kind of favourite places or places that you think that people could really get a flavour for it, but maybe they could, they want to do it over the course of a few weekends, over maybe a few months or a year or whatever. Are there kind of any kind of like places where you think, well, that's a real gem, and I think people would really get a flavour for it there?
Well, I think that one of the best views is that view behind you when you come over and see Nant Francon. I have to say, in fact, my partner's favourite day is Capel Curig to Bethesda.
Yeah.
Because you've got the mountains either side of you, and then you've got that vista opening up. You can nip up to Idwal as well if you want. So that's a lovely day. I'm a bit biased. I like Cwmpen Machno. Quarries above Cwmpen Machno, Rhyw Barc, and the old village there, and the remains of the works. And I suppose my favourite day must be from Croesor to Tanagrisha. So you up the Croesor Valley, you come over, and it's Rossid.
It's a beautiful route.
And the chapel. When I was, I don't know how old I'd been, probably about 8. I remember that chapel with a roof and pews and hymn numbers. I can't remember the hymn numbers.
Brilliant. No, you're right. I think that area as well is kind of, just because it's on the, I'm not sure if it's in the national park itself, but it's definitely very, very close. But there's some pretty epic views along that route down towards Porthmadog and down the estuary there. It's fantastic.
I mean, another bit that actually was relatively new to me was Cwm Cynfal. So if you go from Llanfestiniog over to Cwmpen Machno, you firstly go along Cwm Cynfal, which is fairly flat for a while. Then you've got a steep ascent up to the Mignines, and you've got these great views back. And you've got this waterfall, which is amazing waterfall, particularly if it's in spate. And then you cross the Mignines, which is boggy, but it's Wales.
Brilliant. And do you think it would be a good route for people who are maybe sort of looking to do their first sort of multi-day trip, or like looking to do a prolonged adventure, but that maybe they've been walking and done long day trips, but never kind of in a row type of thing?
I think so. And there are some people who found it quite tough, but I think you need, if you plan it and leave plenty of time. And as I say, I took a group and we did it in 9 days, which gave us time to. Actually, we went into the copper mine at Beddgelert. Is it copper mine? Yes. Oh, where is it? Anyway, there's the mine in Bedgarrett as well, and Llechwedd and the Slate Museum. Plenty of time to look round and have a rest. I think it's quite dramatic for a first trail. I can think of, I've done the Cleveland Way, and it's great, but it's much of a muchness. And here, you don't go up the mountains, but you see them all, and it is quite dramatic.
And do you think that have you seen any difference in terms of obviously the UNESCO designation for the area? If that'll bring more walkers to the path, do you think, or have you noticed a difference since that's been announced?
Yeah, we have a passport scheme where one of the community development aims was to bring business to the local communities, and doing research, Ramblers research suggested that it could be £1 million a year, which is amazing once it was established. And so the only way that we can keep tabs on the number of uses is the number of people who fill in their passport and ask for a commemorative medal. And we have had more in the last year than we have in previous years. So, maybe the usage is going up. Yeah. Yeah,
definitely. And hopefully more people who are listening to the podcast might be inspired. I definitely, I feel guilty because I grew up in Bethesda and I haven't done it. So yeah, maybe one for me to look at, I think.
Oh, you definitely have to run it and beat the fastest known time, eh?
Yeah, I haven't been trail running for a while, so yeah, get myself trained up first. So yeah, brilliant. Lovely.
I mean, there are companies who do self-guided. I think Contour do it self-guided, and there are others like local ones like Lord Ventures who will take small groups and do it they'll even run it if you want. So there's various organisations who will guide you if you're not confident of doing it yourself.
Brilliant. I think no, it's really inspired. So no, thanks for taking the time to speak to us, Al. I'd really, really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. I'm ready to talk about it. Shut me up.
Diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much for joining us for this episode. We hope that you've really enjoyed learning about some of the long distance trails that pass through Snowdonia. Maybe even they've inspired you to undertake one of the trails and get out there in the spring and summer. If you'd like to find out more about the work of Snowdonia National Park or about Ramblers Cymru, make sure you follow us on social media and head over to our website for the latest information.